Welcome to Monsters Among Us. I am your guide, Derek Hayes. It's great to have you with us this fine winter evening, and I can only assume that you're snuggled up, somewhere warm, in anticipation of tonight's broadcast. Well, as excited as you are to hear it, I think I'm twice as excited to share it with you here tonight. So let's just get right after it. Kicking things off here this evening, we begin in parts unknown. Please welcome Jed to the program.
Hey, Derek. This is Jed. I wanted to share this particular one that I was thinking about lately. So, we used to live in an unassuming ranch house in Mississippi, not too far from Hattiesburg and Meridian. Just a nice little quaint community like there used to be back in the 90s. I think this was probably mid-90s that this particular instance happened. This little ranch house we lived in, while unassuming from the outside, we had quite a few experiences in that house. Everything from shadow entities to being grabbed by the feet to seeing mysterious figures that suddenly disappear. But this particular story is one of my favorites. So I remember I was pretty young, probably about 7 years old, and I was sleeping in my own bedroom, and my bed was right at a window, and the blinds were closed, so I couldn't see anything. But I remember waking up, I heard sort of like low voices outside. I was thinking maybe it's my parents that were outside, but why would they be outside? And at the same time, I heard some commotion in the hallway, and I looked over, and there was this overhead light in our hallway that was right outside my door, and for some reason, it was on in the middle of the night, and it was very bright. It's not a light that was too bright to begin with, just enough to illuminate the hallway, but I noticed that it was much brighter than it used to be. And I heard my parents talking out there and trying to figure out what was going on. Come to find out later, apparently the hall light had turned on by itself. Not only turned on by itself, but it was burning brighter than normal. And so my parents went out. I don't know if they thought that maybe one of us turned it on or not, so they tried turning it off. It would not turn off. They turned it off, turned it on, turned it off, nothing. It just stayed on, permanently on. I think that probably lasted maybe a good 15 minutes. And finally, the lights started working again, and they could turn it off and on by themselves. I always thought it was a strange thing, and so I told them about what I heard outside my window. I don't know if they believed me or not, but I always wondered if maybe something had turned that light on because maybe there was somebody outside that was going to rob the house or break into the house or whatnot. And maybe whatever that was, maybe a guardian angel or something, was protecting us by turning that light on to scare them away. Because I only heard the voices outside my window for a little bit, and I think maybe the light startled them. So all in all, just a really cool story from that house. Love the show, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Jed. A bright light, voices outside the window. You know, I can't help but think maybe an electrician might be able to answer this question. Could this be a surge of some sort? A malfunctioning switch? Or were the voices and the light related somehow, in some way? Well, it's weird, whatever it was. And we thank you again, Chad, for calling. Now, folks, let's work in one more quick entry before our first break. So, Laura from North Carolina, the airwaves are all yours.
Hi, Derek. My name is Laura, and I live in the state of North Carolina. What happened was, my dog passed away in October 1st, 2020. I was absolutely devastated. He was the cutest little black and tan wiener dog. And I have another one, just like him, but it's a girl, and she's younger. So he was 13 years old. And what happened was, one night, not long after he passed away, I was in bed with my little girl dog, and she was fast asleep. And she wasn't making any noises because sometimes she snores in her sleep. Well, I had her dog stairs up, and Walter used to use those dog stairs. Walter is the name of my dog that passed away, and Evelyn is my other dog. So the dog stairs were there, going up onto the bed, and I heard the sound of his paws when he first would come up onto the stairs. And I was like, no way. And I swear I heard like the little jingle of his collar, because he had like a tag and like another like cute little nickname. I called him on another tag. And so I heard it clinking. And then I was amazed because, like I said, Evelyn wasn't making any noises and she was asleep. And then I too was just laying there, and I was like, wow. And then there's other times where I felt him moving in the bed and she's not there. Evelyn's not there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Walter in the bed. And then the other night, I heard at the foot of my bed, I heard him whimper. He was kind of like, Whenever he did that sound, when he was alive, it meant he wanted to get up on the bed, or he wanted mommy's attention. But anyway, Derek, take care. Bye.
Thank you, Laura. You know, losing a pet is one of the worst experiences a human can have. I've been there plenty of times. Chances are good I'll be there again. And like most other people that have lost pets, I've kept my ears and my mind open, just in case they come back for a visit. Now, I've never been lucky enough to have such an experience. My fur babies never came back to me, but it sounds like Laura's might have. Touching stuff, Laura, and we appreciate you telling us all about Walter. Thank you again for calling in. Now, gang, let's take our first ad break of the evening. We have mouths to pay and bills to feed after all. But when I return, a vanishing act that'll leave you bewildered. Don't touch that dial.
You don't know what that all is, Mr. Trash.
Describing himself.
Wait for a game to end in week 2.
Now, next up, we make a stop on the East Coast. Please welcome Devin out of New Jersey.
Hello, Derek. This is Devin from New Jersey. I figured I'd take this time to call in and share one of my late father's stories. My father was a locomotive engineer for 27 years. And as you can imagine, with an occupation like that, you might come across some interesting things, whether it be people, things going on, or in this case, the unexplained. He told me about 30-something years ago, had to be early to mid-1990s. He got called into work, average assignment, take a long-haul freight train from northern New Jersey to central Pennsylvania. And the main line snakes up through New Jersey, through the northwestern New Jersey mountains and out to PA. And up in that northwestern part where it's snaking through the mountains, there is a tunnel. straight track through the tunnel, come out of the tunnel. Before a line turns to the right, he said, there's a signal and a siding. And next to the signal, like most railroad signals, there is a electrical box, like a signal bungalow. And on the outside of this bungalow or shed, there is a light that illuminates usually a milepost and the signal number or signal station sign. Anyway, he says they're making their way through the tunnel. He says it's late night, early morning. He said he's well rested. His conductor, who is working with him, is also well rested. They make their way out of the tunnel and they see the signal up ahead and the signal bungalow. Now it's pitch black out, clear night. He says next to the bungalow, you can make out in the light somebody standing next to it, like leaning on the bungalow. You see one hand leaning on it, and whatever it was a shadow of like a man, like a silhouette of a man, and his legs were crossed, hand on the side of the bungalow, just leaning up against it, like chilling out. He says to his conductor, you see that? Who the hell is out here this late at night? And they think nothing of it, like maybe some weirdo or whatever. And they keep approaching the bungalow and their eyes are fixated forward. And they keep getting closer, and my dad says, you can't really make out any details of this individual, whatever or whoever it was. He said it was just kind of like a gray, translucent shadow figure. They get closer and closer. They weren't going that fast. My dad says they get closer to the signal. He looks down at the speedometer real quickly. He said no sooner than he turned his eyes to look at the speedometer, his conductor yells out, holy S, did you see that? The guy just disappeared. My dad's eyes shoot back up forward. Sure enough, that figure is gone. So they get up to the signal, they pass the bungalow, and my dad's looking because it happened closer to his side on the right side. And there's nothing there. He said there's no one there. It's just illuminated the box. They go past it, continue forward. There's no one behind the box or anything. And his conductor's like, I can't believe I just saw that. The guy literally vanished, like literally just evaporated in thin air. And my dad didn't see it, but he missed it for a split second. But sure enough, he looked back up, it was gone. And the conductor was adamant the whole time that dude, it literally just vanished. He kept telling him over and over, I can't believe I saw that. I can't believe I saw that. Anyway, what can he do? So they go back to focusing on work. And once he gets to central Pennsylvania, he gets off the train and everything. He gets to the hotel, and he said he started thinking about it more and more. And he told me, he's like, I couldn't make out any features. He said it was just like a translucent gray shadow figure, perfect silhouette of a man. And he said it was leaning on the box, didn't move one bit, and it disappeared. And he told me it just goes to show that there are things that go bump in the night, and you never know when you might come across something. He told me he's been on that main line many times. He knew that territory well, and he said he's been held at that stop signal before there. And he said, always got an uneasy feeling of being stared at, even in daylight. But he never really paid attention to it because you're focused on your job. But he said, he had many other interesting experiences out there, whether it be people and whatnot. But he said that one of a vanishing man always stuck with him. He's been gone for almost a year now, so I wish I was able to have him record it in his voice. But very, very glad I was able to share this on a platform for others to hear. Love the podcast. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story, Derek, and everybody else. Have a good one.
Thank you, Devin. I'm quite fond of railroad ghosts. There's just something enchanting about the rails. Couple that with the paranormal and you have a chilling combination. Now, we've shared our fair number of train stories over the years here on the program, but it would be fun to do a full Tuesday episode on the subject. So if you're sitting on a call involving a train or the rails, now is a good time to call it in. And I'll tell you how in just one moment. But first, we appreciate the call, Devin, and we're glad that we were able to share his story here with the world. Now, folks, if you have a train story or any other paranormal tale to share, call the hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or you can record a voice memo and email it to me at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now, you guys are doing great when it comes to following these rules, for the most part, but I'm going to keep repeating them to ensure that I don't have to foobar another awesome story because of sound quality. So, call from the quietest place you can find. Moving vehicles are a no-go. One story per call, one submission per story. If you run out of time, just pick up where you left off and my amazing team will take care of it. That number one more time is 888-608-NIGHT. Now, speaking of disappearing people, I have another similar story to share with you here tonight. But for this one, we venture a little bit north to the state of New York, where Will is waiting with a wild one.
Hi, my name is Will. I'm from Buffalo, New York. And when I was younger, I went out one night to go take the car to the back of the house. At the end of the street was a funeral home. And when I was going around the street, there was a guy in all white, and he was kind of like glowing. Now, it was about 12 o'clock at night, pouring rain. I mean, such pouring rain. If you walked out for a second, you were soaked. So he was out in the middle of the funeral home in all white under the only light. And as I was rounding the corner, I looked at him, and he was standing, staring right at me, smiling. And it was kind of weird. It was like we had a moment. So I rounded the corner, and I had to bring my second car to the back of the house so I didn't get a ticket. And when I did, he was gone. And it was 12 at night, pouring rain. When I rounded that house, it only took me a minute because I wanted to see if he was still there. So I sprinted to the other car, and I got right in the car, and I drove right around. So it was maybe a minute difference, maybe 2 minutes probably. But anyway, there was no way he could have got out of that line of sight down this long street in the area that I was in. The street was Pine Avenue. It's very long. He couldn't have gone anywhere. So that was kind of weird. Kind of feel like maybe something has been in that house and maybe followed me ever since. So since then, I would have sleep paralysis in that house. And I would always wake up and I couldn't move. And it was kind of weird. I'm not super religious, but I did notice that when I prayed, it would stop and go away. So I remember one time I sat up in the morning when it had happened, and I tried to move. I couldn't. I prayed, and as soon as I did, I could hear kind of a weird sound, like something fighting. And when I got up, because as soon as I was sat up, I said out loud, "Thank you, God." And I heard this evil growl right next to my ear. And I jumped up, I ran out of the house, and it turns out that I was the only one in the house at that time. So in any case, years later, I moved to another house, and I think it followed me there because it's like 3 a.m, I would hear walking in the attic. In this apartment that I lived in, I hear walking in the attic every single night at about 3 a.m. And one night in particular, I had this evil dream that this thing was attacking me, and it said its name was Darius. And I looked it up in Old Ancient Hebrew. It means "the who possesses." So that freaked me out because I woke up remembering this name. But one night in particular, living in this next house I went to, I woke up and my bed was smashing the wall. And it was about, I'd say, 3 a.m. And I didn't move. I didn't open my eyes because I knew I was in a bedroom by myself, and I knew the door actually had a bolt, and I knew I had locked it. So I knew I was in the room by myself. And oddly enough, I sleep with my lights on because of all the weird things that's happened in my life. So as soon as I sat up, the bed stopped rocking. And the girl that I was dating at the time, who I'm now married to, called me frantically at 3 a.m. And she's like, "I just had this dream that something was trying to hurt you." She was like almost in tears. And she said, "I'm leaving. I'm coming to stay with you tonight." And that was completely weird because I had the bed rocking, and at the exact same time, she called me right after. So that was weird.
Thank you, Will. Now, Will's call sort of cut out there, but I think we got the majority of it. How very similar to the story Devin just detailed. A shadowy figure under outdoor lighting that simply disappeared into thin air. I tell you, at the very least, it's a fun coincidence. Now, the question that we're left with here is, Are these shadow man encounters? Were they ghosts? Humans in the shadows that are really good at dipping out? Or is this a brand new phenomenon? Lots of weirdness with this one. It's exactly how we like it. Thank you again, Will, for making the phone call.
Win tickets before you can buy them, sir.
They're kicking themselves in that Thursday night game. They're up 20-plus points. Part of it, I think, was that was for a home field advance.
Now, folks, I don't know a lot about this next caller, but please welcome them to tonight's program.
Hey, I keep hearing people talk about shadow people, and I have had 2 different experiences with shadow people. These both happened the tip of Texas, South Texas. The first one was I was living with my grandmother, and I was sitting in the living room with my sister's girlfriend at the time, and the door was open because it was hot, middle of the day, and my grandmother didn't have central air. So the door was open, we had a screen door, and we could see what looked like a line of shadow people coming in. Like, it just looked like it was up against the wall behind, like, the TV that we were watching. We could see tall people. Some looked short, some had long hair, some had short hair. It looked like some, like, were girls wearing ponytails. We looked at each other, and I was like, do you see that? And she's like, yeah, I do. I was like, that looks like a lot of people. So I got up to see, and she said, I could see your shadow up against the wall, just like the rest of the people when you were by the door. So it looked like a bunch of people had walked into our house, but nobody was there. Nobody did. There was nobody outside when I went to go check. And the second one also happened years later after that one. But I had moved away, and when I went back to the same city to go visit my father, I was in his house, and it was in the middle of the night. I was asleep in a room with my husband and my son. It was a pretty big, like, queen-size bed. So I was dead asleep, and I woke up, and I sat up, and I could see the outline of a woman, and it was darker than the whole room. I could see a perfect outline of a woman with, like, long curly hair, and she was just standing there, and to me, it resembled my dad's wife who was living there, so I thought she was in the room, and I call out her name, and I'm like, Paula, and this shadow person just kind of, like, they were marching, they just kind of, like, turned around and walked out in a weird way, and I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't spooked. I was like, okay. And then I felt the need to go pee, so I climbed out of bed, and I walked out, not even like a second later. And I looked, and I couldn't see anybody, and I used the restroom, came back out, and I looked, nothing. The next day, I asked Paula if she was in the room and if she found anything she needed last night. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, I saw you in there. She's like, no, you didn't. And I was like, yeah. And I told her, your hair was down because she has really curly hair. And she's like, no, I slept with a braid in my hair. She's like, I didn't get up. It freaked us both out. I don't know what was in the room looking at me sleeping, but yeah, it was really freaky. She freaked out. She said she had never seen anything in that house. My dad had mentioned seeing some woman who would wear white, but nobody else saw that woman. I didn't see no woman in white. I just saw what looked like a shadow person in the darkness watching me sleep, which is weird. Thank you. Really like the show. Bye.
Thank you, caller. Now, maybe I'm just programmed to look for it now, but that line of shadow people, I don't suppose those were the menacing, mirrored men, were they? The description certainly lent to the possibility, though none of the other symptoms seem to be there. Not to mention the fact that the house seems to be paranormally active, despite many claims to the contrary. Eerie stuff, caller, and we thank you again for making the call. Now, switching gears here, our next entry comes to us from Big Sky Country, but takes place over in Gettysburg. But before you go making assumptions, this one might not go the direction you think it might. Please welcome Justin to the program.
Hey, Derek. Justin out here in Montana. I actually grew up out in Maryland. I went to high school right over the border there in Fairfield. It's like 8 miles below Gettysburg. Anyway, just being kids, young, and in high school, you know, you just do a lot of driving around, hanging out. And one night, me and a buddy, we went up into Gettysburg and went out on the battlefields in the middle of the night. And battlefields are shut down at nighttime, like you're not supposed to be out there. Anyway, we went out to this place called Devil's Den. It's kind of like a big bouldery area. It's kind of far out there, like no lights out on the battlefields. It's pretty desolate. Anyway, you got to drive out, take these roads that kind of just, you know, wind and go back. There's this bouldery outcropping, like there's a bunch of big boulder field, and I believe it's like right below Little Round Top. Anyway, there's another part of the battlefield there that's significant, and to where this is, there's this little area where there's actually like a placard with a picture of like a soldier that was killed. He must have like a little sniper's nest or something right there. On the other side of that big boulder area, there's like a little parking area. You know, if you come out to look at the battlefield, you can park and walk around. Anyway, me and my buddy are out there on the other side of where this picture is. We're just hanging out, sitting out there talking. It's a summer night. It's probably like 2 a.m. Super quiet. And all of a sudden, a rock flies down, lands next to us, boom, boom, on the ground next to the car. And another rock lands down there. I mean, not like a big rock, but like little pebbles. So they just keep coming. We look at each other like, what the? And we look around, and we like go walk around through the boulders, see if somebody's there. But it's desolate. There's no cars out there, so nobody else is out there parked, hanging out like we're doing. And it's kind of like too far to really be walking around. There's no trees above us, like nuts would be falling from the trees or the seeds or whatever. I don't know, I just thought it was really weird. Me and my buddy were real creeped out. After we knew like nobody was there messing with us, we were like, man, this is weird. And then we kind of like maybe thought, hey, it could possibly be some ghosts, or man, I don't know, maybe soldiers back in the day used to do that, like signal each other to be quiet, or I don't know. I mean, I'm talking like these were like intentionally thrown at us. Yeah, so that was it. Thought I'd call it in and just let you know about it.
Thanks, Justin. All right, there's lots to cover here, but let's start with the location itself. It's no secret that Gettysburg is a hotbed for paranormal activity. We talk about that location all the time here on the program. But Devil's Den is a specific and infamous location there at the battlefield turned national park. Now, Devil's Den is the name given to the ridge strewn with large boulders south of Gettysburg. It was the site of some of the fiercest fighting in the heat of the battle that took place back in July of 1863. The outcrop is a rock city of boulders, and it provided soldiers numerous hideaways with its narrow fissures and hollows. The Confederates drove out Union troops who were in this location on the late afternoon of July 2nd in heavy fighting. Once in position, the Confederates used the boulders of Devil's Den for protection as they shot at Union forces on Little Round Top. It was one of the few Southern successes in that day's fighting. Total casualty estimates are over 800 for the Union and more than 1,800 among the Confederates. So for Justin to assume that there might be a ghost or two involved wouldn't be that far-fetched. He has some 2,600 souls to choose from, after all. So could this have been some sort of residual haunting? Were the rocks that fell from the sky pieces of spectral shrapnel? Or could there be a more earthly explanation? Now here is the part where we make a sudden left turn. Now there have long been rumors and reports that Bigfoot would throw rocks and small boulders to ward off folks that wandered too close to their territory. We've heard that detail numerous times over the years. So could it be possible that there was, or still is, a Bigfoot on the battlegrounds of Gettysburg? Well, for that to be possible, I think we first need some sort of corroboration. And thanks to some sleuthing done by Delaney, I think maybe that exists. The following report was sent in to the BFRO. The sighting occurred in January of 1998 and took place along Route 116 between Gettysburg and Fairfield. My wife and I were returning from a friend's home in Gettysburg. In front of my headlights, I saw this animal step over a fence and walk across the road, west to east. The animal stopped in the middle of the field and looked back at the car, and I stopped to observe. The creature was at least 7 to 8 feet tall, as it easily stepped over a 4 to 5 foot fence, then crossed the road in only 2 or 3 steps. The color was dark brown or black, and the hair was not overly long. It was very peculiar how the eyes were a very visible red, even when the car's headlights were not shining onto them. Now, it is worth noting that there are 4 other Bigfoot reports from Adams County, the county that Gettysburg belongs to. So we certainly can't say that it's impossible, but it's also likely not probable either. But it is a ton of fun to connect the dots. And to show you that this sort of thing does happen, Bigfoot chucking rocks, that is. Please welcome Salen from the opposite side of the continent.
Hi, my name is Phelan. I'm from British Columbia, Canada. I'm calling in about my experience with what I believe to be a sasquatch. It was 2018, August long weekend, and I was camping at a spot called Elbow Lake. Getting ready to camp for the weekend, I brought my partner at the time to the spot we were going on a Thursday night to save the spot because I had to work the Friday. So he was alone the Thursday night before my friends and I made it to the spot. Fast forward, the weekend went great. Once we were all there, we hiked up the logging road we were camping at the base of, checking out the view. Being reckless young adults, we found a large cliff with these big boulders, and we were pushing the boulders down this cliff, laughing, thinking it was fun. Looking back, very irresponsible. But we went back down to the camp thinking nothing of it. So the last night we were there, it was down to the 4 of us. My ex, my good friend, and her boyfriend. The boys went to bed pretty early, and my friend and I stayed up late sitting around the fire. When she had the idea to go back up the logging road, it was a full moon, clear sky, so the walk and the view was lit to the point where we didn't even need a flashlight. I agreed that it would be awesome to see the view lit up by the moon. We went back up the road, which took about 5 minutes, not far. We're standing at this large clearing, the spot where we were all pushing boulders off the cliffs earlier that weekend. She's looking towards the valley, and I suddenly had this feeling like something or someone said, "Turn around, look." So I turned around facing the trail back to camp, and I kid you not, I saw this giant boulder get tossed from the hillside onto the trail. It didn't roll down, it made this giant arch from the mountainside and landed in the center of the path back to camp. It was so brightly lit that I saw it crash onto the ground and shoot rocks up from the impact. My friend didn't see it, but she heard it. She turned around to me. We looked at each other in the eyes and she said, "We should go back to camp." I agreed, but she didn't know what just made the sound was the boulder in the path we had to take back. I was so scared, but I said, yes, we should go back to camp. We passed it on the way back, and this giant boulder was so big, it made a divide in the trail, so you could see the rocks around it broken up and the boulder itself broken to pieces. I didn't tell her I saw it, like what I saw, until the next day, because I didn't want to scare her. We went back to camp. We went back into our tents. I did not sleep at all that night. It freaked me out so much. I feel like we made him mad by kicking the boulders down the cliff earlier that weekend, and it was a warning to show what he could do if we kept screwing around there. The lake we were camping at, it's on a First Nation reserve called Sustainably, and the band's logo is literally Sasquatch. Most Sasquatch stories from the valley I live in are from that area, so there's no doubt that my friends and I upset them that weekend. Once we all made it home, I told my partner at the time what happened, and he told me the night that he was staying there by himself, he kept hearing what sounded like big hoots coming from up the road. He said it sounded like a hunter doing a goose call, which I'm pretty familiar with, but he said it was way louder and deeper than he'd ever heard. And he didn't want to tell us because he didn't want to scare us from camping there. I'm just glad that that was the most we experienced. I haven't gone there since. I used to go fishing there, I used to go for day trips, we'd have fires, I'd take a book up there and read by myself. But ever since then, after I saw that, I do not want to go back there. I've had other friends tell me about odd experiences they've had at that lake, and I believe them more now than ever. I've told this story and I get so much disbelief from people, but anyone who has been to that area and experienced something themselves, they have no doubt about it, that they believe that I got a warning from Sasquatch to not screw around in that area. Me growing up in this area, being First Nations, my grandma always told me, you're never supposed to say their name, you're never supposed to speak out to them because it will draw them towards you. So me having this story and talking about it, I feel like I'm breaking the rule of saying Sasquatch. I'm never supposed to say that word. But I believe entirely that that is what I had an experience with that night. Something I'll never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Salen. Yes, that is very irresponsible. I was recently reading about some teens that were charged with murder after they pushed a heavy log over a cliff. That log continued down the slope and made contact with a 44-year-old hiker who tragically passed away when she was struck. The teens were later found guilty and ended up spending years in juvenile detention. A tragic story all around. And there is a link in tonight's show notes if you'd like to dig a little deeper. But yeah, it's not smart to do that kind of thing, ever. And as a hiker myself, I really insist that you don't. But we're not here for a lecture. We're here for the Sasquatch. And unlike the rolling fields of Gettysburg, the wilds of British Columbia, Canada, are a well-known Bigfoot hotspot. The hotspot, if you ask certain investigators. So to suggest that it may have been Bigfoot throwing rocks would this time make a lot more sense. But anytime I hear a report of Bigfoot throwing big boulders, I always think of the same story. A tale I first heard about on a History Channel documentary from the 2010s called Bigfoot, The Definitive Guide. And here is that story, directly from that TV documentary.
Stories of rock-throwing wild men date back generations in the Chilliwack region. It's July 1934, and local Native American Tom Cedar is out fishing for trout. He's lived and hunted in this remote area all his life. But he's taken completely by surprise when what he reports to be a Sasquatch starts hurling rocks, trying to capsize his canoe.
Now, luckily for us, the entire documentary is available for free up on YouTube. Go tune in if this sort of thing gets your blood pumping. And let me tell you, if a beach ball-sized rock hurtling at you at highway speeds doesn't get your blood going, well, I fear that nothing will. Amazing stuff, Salen. I haven't been up that way for quite some time, but I'd love to go back again just to track down the big guy myself. As they say on TV, That place is squatchy. Thank you again for ringing in.
That's all well and good. And who's number 2 on your list?
Without words than to have words without a heart. Like a person with size.
This next one explores a topic that's been popping up a lot lately: floating orbs. Please welcome Sebastian from Colorado.
Good morning, Derek and Monsters Among Us crew. This is Sebastian from Southern Colorado. So, I lived and grew up in a house in the small town of Hays, Kansas. And the house itself was located directly across the street and behind the old Fort Hays remains. Anyhow, a bunch of strange occurrences happened in that house. However, the one I'm going to share this time is what I believe now my experience with ball lightning. I want to say I was about 12 years old. I was at home. It was a normal day. Mom was at work. Sister was, I don't know, she was a teenager off doing whatever she was doing. The sky was clear. There was not a storm or a cloud in the sky. It wasn't raining. There was nothing to have signaled what was about to happen. As I'm walking through my dining room, which my mom had converted it to her art studio, and I had my bedroom in the basement, and I'd have to come up the stairs from the basement and then go through the art studio to the kitchen to get something to eat. So as I get up the stairs, I'm walking towards the kitchen through the art studio, and I hear what sounds like crashing, like a very loud, not quite thunder, but like a stack of books had fallen from a shelf. And as soon as that sound registered in my ears into my brain, a ball of light about the size of a basketball came through the roof, through the ceiling. I believe that the noise happened at the same time that it had crossed through the ceiling. It was very bright. It was emitting what looked like electricity, possibly plasma, and it did not go to the ground. Once it came through the ceiling, I hit the floor because I didn't know what this was. I heard crashing. I thought maybe something had broken through the ceiling. The whole incident happened in about 5 seconds. It was extremely quick. It crashed through the ceiling. I say crashed because of the noise. It did not break anything. Hovered about midway from the floor to the ceiling and zoomed around the dining room and flew down into the stairwell to the basement. Now, I did not know of ball lightning until years and years later. I didn't know what it was once I started researching cases of ball lightning and other people's descriptions of it and all of that. I believe that that's what it was. However, it seemed that this thing had an intelligence to it. And I only say that because it had, once it came through the ceiling, I watched it zoom around the room and then strategically go lower and into the stairwell and down. Once I saw it go down there, I went to see where it went. It completely disappeared. There was no remnants of it. There was no residue. There was nothing left. What's interesting is there was not like a scorch mark or anything on anything. It scared me very much, but I was more intrigued because at this point in time in that house, I had already had plenty of experiences and I never saw it again. Nothing like that had ever happened again. It was a one-off chance thing that I still can't explain. I appreciate your time very much, Derek, and thank you again for everything that you do. Stay spooky.
Thank you, Sebastian. What do you think here, folks? Is this that little understood phenomenon known as ball lightning? If so, why was there no other inclement weather reported? Or is this a ghostly orb of some sort? A ball of energy that at one point may have been a human being? Or is it possible that this was something else completely? After all, Sebastian did mention that whatever it was, it seemed to have a mind of its own. Crazy stuff. And we thank you again, Sebastian, for sharing it with us. Well, gang, that brings us to tonight's closer. And for this one, we make way for a seldom reported creature, but a beast of nightmare origins. Austin, welcome to the program.
Hey, Derek and Monsters Among Us crew. This is Austin from southern Kalamazoo County. I've called in a couple times. I've been kind of holding back on telling this story because I'm starting to understand how people felt back in the day when they would give a UFO account and be ridiculed, or have people roll their eyes, because it's kind of where I see the same thing, and it's hard to tell even my most subscribing of friends as far as the paranormal stuff is concerned, or alien encounters and whatnot. But back in 2014 in Pensacola, Florida, that's where I was living at the time. To preface this, I was having a really rough time. It's probably one of the worst moments of my life. Just no family, no support. I had a really hard time, troubles with my girlfriend and whatnot. That can't be discounted as a factor, but over the years, all of these puzzle pieces have come together, and I've had sleep paralysis all throughout my childhood. It stopped since I became an adult. And so I know exactly what sleep paralysis is. This is not a case of that. I was laying in bed one night, fully awake, fully aware, and as I rolled over and looked at my bookshelf that was about, I'd say maybe like 8 feet away, all of a sudden the whole thing erupted in this kaleidoscopic, geometric, like green, almost like matrix coloring, but not quite. It's a little bit more colorful than that. Just inside this bookshelf, the room was dark, and out of it started pulsing back and forth this insectoid creature. It was just so psychedelic. It had multiple arms sticking out the side, almost as like some sort of, I don't know how to describe it. It was just so kaleidoscopic, it was hard to make out the detail, but I could definitely tell that it was an insectoid being of some sort. And it kept pulsating like forward and backward. It was all just encapsulated in this bookshelf. There was nothing else in the room. My girlfriend was sleeping right next to me, and I remember rolling over, looking at her, and then rolling back over. And the weird part about this is I had no fear whatsoever, which blows my mind because I've never experienced anything like this. So I'd roll over, I look back at it, still there. And then from there, I don't recall anything. And now I've been putting these pieces together later on in life. I mean, I've always been interested in the paranormal and all that jazz. I mean, since I was a kid obsessed with aliens, I mean, I've had recurring dreams of standing in a field and watching this bell-shaped, or like the cap of a mushroom, UFO sitting there and kind of wobbling like a top up in the sky with just absolute fear. And just every time it's just, I'm so fearful. I'm so afraid of this thing. And then every time the dream is in grayscale, which is weird because I do have very vivid dreams and they are usually in bright color. I actually have a lot of alien themed dreams that are recurring, but that's the main one that I had growing up. But I don't know if that's correlated or not. Could be just that I've made sure that my life is inundated with this kind of information and research. So anyway, I didn't realize this for years, but the morning after I woke up from that experience, I didn't even draw a connection to it at the time. I had a nickel or a quarter size, basically wound on my leg. And I was working for two men in a truck at the time doing a moving company and figured, man, I must have hit my leg on something. It's kind of really weird. And for like a couple of days, it just maintained there. There's this scab and it just looked awful. And I was wondering, man, do I have a skin-eating disease or something? Is this some sort of necrosis? And then after, it was only like 2 days. It was just one morning I woke up and it was gone. Like just completely gone. And in place of that, I now have, and I'll send you a picture of this, a scoop mark, as I've come to find out is a thing in the alien abduction lore. That's giving me goosebumps, man. I started recently putting all of this into ChatGPT, which I know is not exactly the most intelligent resource, or however you'd put it, and definitely self-affirming. The more and more I look into these abduction reports and I start to search it online and through ChatGPT, I hit every pinpoint that you could have for an abduction experience. It freaks me out. I had no idea that the kaleidoscopic effects, the insectoid being, the scoop mark, the grayscale, reoccurring dreams, like all of these are textbook abduction. I don't know what you call it. All I know is it freaks me out. Sorry, you can probably hear it in my voice, but appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. What a terrifying concept. And Austin did send in those photographs of his scoop mark, and you can see them in tonight's show notes at monstersamonguspodcast.com and by clicking on the show notes tab. And wouldn't you know that Austin isn't the only person to have just such an encounter. Another experiencer by the name of Kim Carlsberg also claims to have been abducted by a very similar creature. Now here is that account, obtained during a hypnosis session, made available by the show UFO Witness on Travel Channel.
I'm in bed, so tired. After midnight, and I fall asleep, but then I wake up and I'm out of my bed with a giant room and the walls are wet. I'm not alone. I'm scared. There's creatures staring at me. It's like a bug, a walking stick with a huge head, the eyes. Listen. It comes closer. It touches me. Nothing's hidden from the mantis. It puts tubes in me, probing, and then they flay me like a lab rat. It opens me, my skull, my chest, claws me open.
Terrifying. Now these things are unmistakable. 7, 8, 9 feet tall. Skinny, large heads, large eyes, very much resembling the praying mantis of the animal kingdom, which is how these entities, the mantis aliens or mantis men, got their name. And as you've heard, most of these encounters seem to go the same way. They seem to suggest some sort of abduction event. Now, to drive my point home here, that these abduction cases are too similar to be a coincidence, and to share another example of this phenomenon, here is a first-hand account from the Humanoid Contact Database, an excellent resource for all sorts of humanoid encounters. The following occurred late at night on March 14th, 2004, near London, Ontario, Canada. On Sunday night, the witness woke to see 2 tall praying mantis-type beings standing in the middle of his bedroom. They looked as if they were engaged in a conversation, making high-pitched, almost digital clicking sounds at each other. The witness was too tired to be afraid, so he concentrated on making a mental description, cross-checking it with the ones he'd seen before. Both were extremely thin and tall, well over 7 feet high. One was slightly taller than the other. Their necks were long, flexible, and tube-like, and didn't look strong enough to support their triangular heads. The neck and the head moved in a way that reminded the witness of the old stop-motion monster films, or like a lizard. Both were wearing long black robes that looked like liquid oil. On the side of the face, he could clearly see a small round hole just above their eyes. He felt completely drained, and he couldn't move. He then slipped back into unconsciousness. Now the real question here is, are these simply sleep paralysis tropes? Is the human mind programmed to imagine just such a creature when we slip into that unsettling sleep disorder Or is it possible that these are truly creatures from another time, planet, or plane? Perhaps they do steal humans in the middle of the night. Perhaps they are indeed subjecting us to a maelstrom of medical experiments. Maybe these things are real. Now, normally I would go with the sleep paralysis theory, but if people like Austin continue to share physical evidence with us, then I just might have to change my stance. But I am hoping that this call will inspire a few other victims to call in and share their experience with these bug-eyed visitors. But for now, that's going to do it for this evening. But before I move on to tonight's credits, a quick reminder to go to the show notes and check out the photos that Austin sent in. Draw your own conclusion. Now, a huge thanks to Austin for calling in, and a huge thanks to all of tonight's contributors, and an even bigger thanks to you, dear listener, for tuning in here tonight. Now, Monsters Among Us podcast is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes, Delaney Bowers, and Connor Ryan. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Give us a like and follow on our social media accounts. Join us on our Discord server. Join us on YouTube and leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. Now, don't forget you can catch the show every Saturday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern on the UNX Digital Network. Just visit unxnetwork.com to tune in. And finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Co.AG Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Now go watch our movie, BorregoTriangle.com. We'll get you all the information. Join us over at Monsters Among Us Jr. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. And finally, join us in the Beyond. Just keep listening for more details on how to access days worth of back MAU content for the price of a fast food coffee. Now, I highly recommend you stick around for a bit, but for those of you that won't, have a good night.
We're to walk carefully. Dry, deserty vegetation, or the clothes.
Tell it, girl. Tell it. Because
Now, tonight's secret entry comes to us from the land of Lincoln. Please welcome Morgan to the program.
Derek, this is Morgan from Illinois, but this story happens in St. Louis. It was about 2014. I'm on my way to a concert and at a red light turning at Forest Park. If anyone's from around the area, they'll know. The car's completely silent. We have no radio on. We're in the car at the red light, and all of a sudden, what sounds like from the back of my car in the seat, we hear a very gruff voice yell the word, "Hey!" And that's it. Completely silent afterwards. It made us both jump out of our skin. We turn around, look, nothing in the back, obviously. It's just me and a girl in the car. Nobody outside. Nobody nearby. No other drivers react to it. And to this day, I get chills when I think about how angry that sounded coming from somewhere in the car. The only thing I can possibly think of that makes sense is maybe my radio picked up some frequency somewhere and played it over the speakers at the exact right time that there was an electrical glitch with the car. Never happened to me before or after. Just very strange. I'd love your thoughts on it. Thanks. Love your show.
Thanks, Morgan. A long time ago, I had myself a similar experience. I was in bed about to fall asleep, and suddenly, as loud as can be, in my right ear I heard a male quickly say the word, "Hey." No one was around. I don't think I was asleep yet, and it was too loud to have come from the outside. All this time, I've attributed that experience to exploding head syndrome, a sleep disorder to hear loud noises or a voice just as they're about to fall asleep. But it sounds like that's not quite the situation Morgan was in when he had his experience. But that doesn't mean it wasn't an amazing entry, Morgan. On the contrary, in fact. So thank you again for taking the time to call in. Now, gang, it's time to go beyond the after show that we put on every Thursday evening, right after the main episode. And to join us here tonight, and to get access to days worth of back content, just visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the Patreon tab, or join us directly on Patreon or Apple subscriptions. Either way, $5 a month gives you access to everything ad-free. So what are you waiting for? It's on the Beyond that you can hear stories like this one from Rena in the state of Oregon.
Hi, my name is Rena, and I've grown up in Oregon all my life. And I wanted to tell you a story about my dad. So when I was 3, my dad was a trucker, and he would go to the coast and come back, and he had a trucking accident. A tire blew out. He was 31. I was 3 years old. So my mom was used to him calling when he got back from his run, and he would kind of connect with her before he came home. Well, that call never came in, and we had just moved, so the officer that had came to our house to tell my mom that he had passed away went to our old house. So my mom was on the phone, and